The information in this video is brought to you by University of Vermont Extension, with funding from the Northeast Center for Risk Management Education, through a grant from the United States Department of Agriculture.
Ross Thurber lives and works on Lilac Ridge Farm in Brattleboro. The farm has been in his family since 1937. Growing up, Ross thought about becoming a farmer, but he didn't make up his mind until he met Amanda.
I met Amanda while I was at UVM, and that sort of definitely changed the landscape as far as thinking about farming and farming with her. She was interested in agriculture. She was studying plant and soil science. So we kind of came back together, and we were married the year after I graduated. She had graduated a year ahead of me. So we kind of went into this together.
The summer that Ross and I got married, which was 1996, we talked to our caterer and we said we'd like to grow all of the food and source it all locally for our wedding. At that time, that was pretty uncommon, and the caterer and our friends said, gosh, that's a lot of work and sounds a little crazy. You really can get everything locally? And we did. That relationship ended up being our first relationship with our first wholesale market.
Along with Amanda's market garden, the family also sugars and harvests timber off 300 acres of woodland. The engine of the farm is the 50-cow milking herd. The milk they make gets sold to Organic Valley, a farmer-owned cooperative. Ross and Amanda were ready to be farmers. The owners at the time, Ross's parents, Stuart and Beverly, agreed and found the newlyweds a place to live and work.
We were on strictly a trial basis. You know, he and Amanda actually worked for us as an employee, and that was, it was a trial to see if this would work for them and work for us. And then after they'd worked for a year and we had made a small apartment on the farm for them to live in, and then we started exploring ways of including them into the partnership.
With farm transfers, it's not unheard of to bring children and their spouses into the business. For Stuart, a UVM graduate himself, it was about carrying on a family tradition.
It was a process. I had become a partner with my folks, and then when Beverly came on, she became a partner. My father was forward-looking, I think, because he thought we ought to do more, and so we actually took over the farm in 1975. And how he came up with that was not done that much back in those days. You know, he
because he really gave over full control to the farm when Stu came back from college.
Yeah.
In 1998, University of Vermont Extension helped the Thurbers set up a partnership in which each member owned 25% of the animals and machinery. This gave Ross and Amanda a chance to build equity. Ross began an intensive grazing program, and to ensure a more stable income, he switched from conventional to organic milk production. A few years later, Ross phased out the farm's Christmas tree operation because he felt the farm was too diversified. Stu and Bev still maintained the deed, but sold the farm's development rights. This ensured Ross's sisters had a share in their family's farm property, and it would also provide a nest egg for Stu and Bev.
You have to understand that the next generation wants to have their own ideas, and you have to allow them to have their own ideas, and you have to create an environment that allows them to do that. And so you have to be positive, and you have to let go of control. You're not going to have another generation on the farm if you always want to be in control. So you have to learn to let go of it.
Often those conversations start with my mom because she's, she's very keen. She's always been very keen on the, success comes from successful structure, of a business or even family. So I think I would give her credit to saying maybe helping lay the groundwork towards creating a partnership. In such confined.
Ross takes a rational approach when it comes to running a family business.
Yeah. I have a kind of complicated view of ownership in some ways. It's not the driving force for why I get out of bed every morning and work on the farm. It's not. It wasn't like a grinding calculator in my head. When I think about the work that I was doing, but obviously from a business perspective and from a sort of longevity perspective, it made sense to do at that time. But and that may just be reflective of the fact that my personality, and I'm the third generation, and that in the sense of if I was my grandfather, sort of the pioneer of this particular enterprise, then you probably might see it differently. So I think there's always, with each generation, there's adjustment and change depending on one's skill set and personality.
Many farm families find dotting I's and crossing T's in a business contract easy. Sorting out emotions is much more complicated.
I would say a spirit of gratitude is very helpful, and also recognition that a farm transfer experience for especially the older generation may be really challenging, and maybe the old sort of like put yourself in their shoes. There are a lot of emotions attached to it. There's supremely a ton of identity wrapped up with the farm. And a loss of identity and a transition can be so painful and can bring up a lot of things. It can bring up anger sometimes. It can bring up impatience. It can bring up sadness. And to really recognize that those are real things and to be compassionate too. I don't think that in our situation we were subject to have to bear that for the older generation at all, but I could see how that could happen. And also there's ups and downs. Just because things are going really great right now, it doesn't mean that if the following month relationships are a little more sensitive, that there's anything necessarily going wrong. It's just part of the process. It's kind of just what happens, and for all parties involved.
I guess clear communication and intention between all parties, and I think laying the groundwork for honesty, in which all that conversation needs to happen before you can even talk about the nuts and bolts of any kind of agreement. That all parties need to have an inherent trust in one another.
I have to say that communication was the key factor to this, and there was constant communication. We set up weekly meetings. We met every Monday morning to plan the week together, the four of us, and I think that was a key factor to understanding what everyone's goals for the week were.
I think I'm not the one to want to accumulate a lot of things as far as, although it happened, land and goods, I think of myself more of a steward for the land and for the farm and being able to pass it along. And it's worked. I mean, we're not too bad off by doing it that way.
I see that.
Bev and Stu still like to lend a hand around the farm. They've sold all but 1% of their shares in the business to Ross and Amanda. As for the land, the four partners worked with Yankee Farm Credit to form an LLC, or limited liability company. The LLC allows Stu and Bev to gradually gift their shares of the land to Ross and Amanda.
There's always been kind of a third-party involvement in this process, which I think has been really important. Important for accountability, important for probably negotiating any peripheral tensions that might exist.
I think outside advice is helpful, and particularly when it comes to areas of expertise that we're not familiar with. But I still think that you sort of have to come at it with a pretty honest core of understanding between each other, so that you can take that advice and sort of bounce it across what you know already about each other and your own intentions.
Like his grandfather and his father, Ross Thurber believes a farm transfer between families begins at home.
The values sort of trump family in some ways, and I think that's kind of an important consideration. I mean, if the values aren't there within the family, it's not going to work. At the end of the day, no one's going to feel sorry for the family for not communicating. Except you have to really take that and own that as a group of individuals. That and unfortunately, there's things that are family issues that have nothing to do with farming, nothing to do with the business, that get in the way of agriculture and farming. And farming is such a loaded sort of term. Family farm is a kind of a load. It triggers all kinds of things in people that think that because it is it's a unique business. You're taking care of animals and you're making plants grow, and it has it's not a we're not producing widgets, and I think that memories are involved. Childhood memories get involved. So there's got to be some kind of reconciliation that happens, like that. This is for the greater good. And
farm transfers are personal and specific. And yes, there are tools and strategies for negotiation. Best to think of it like life. It's not the destination, it's the journey.